So we've asked AI to review our car because whilst the future of the modern day car is unknown, we want to find out if the future of automotive journalism is also at risk. So with that, I present to you the latest generation of Honda Civic. Now this is actually my car and I've done 10,000 miles in just a few months. So we've said the AI can be as brutal and as honest as it likes, but I'm going to have a pretty good idea of whether it's right or wrong. Let's get into it.
The Civic Sport looks sharper and more mature than older Civics. It's got a sense of purpose, but it hasn't completely shaken off the sensible car vibe.
So this is where we first disagree with the AI, because I would actually say this is definitely the best looking Honda Civic and possibly one of the best looking cars on the road today. It actually reminds me a little bit of the Audi A5, A7 type design, which are the kingpin in understated, sleek performance. Now admittedly there's a couple of angles that are slightly less favourable to this car, but the side profile of this car is absolutely stunning.
The grille gives the car a scowling face, trying to look sporty and aggressive. It works in some lights, but in others it feels like Honda's trying a bit too hard.
So I can kind of agree with this one a little bit. I did prefer the previous generation Civic, which was a little bit lower down and looked a bit more aggressive. This has the aggression of a big guard dog Rottweiler, but just after you've told it off and cancelled walkies.
This is the first generation of Honda Civic where the rear of the car actually looks like it actually fits. It seems that Honda are dropping the ASBO look that Civics have had for the past 10 years.
I'd say that overall, there's no doubt this is the best looking Civic that Honda has ever produced. Now, I definitely agree with the AI that previous generations of the Civic would have had most people reaching for a bucket. A controversial side note though is that I used to own the previous generation and I actually loved the way that that car looked, despite the fact it did look like a lorry had driven into it. Now, of course, the rear of this car does look absolutely stunning. The only thing that annoys me a little bit too much is these taillights that kind of taper off down the side. It makes the rear of the car look bigger than it actually is, which I guess has been their plan. Instead of a lorry driving into the back of this one, it almost looks like someone's leaned on the car for a little bit too long.
The honeycomb strip across the dash looks slick, but it also collects dust like a magnet. Cleaning it is like combing a hedgehog.
Well, joke's on you because I'm too busy to be cleaning cars. I run a video business, not a car wash.
The chunky dials for climate control are a welcome throwback, precise and tactile. Spinning them feels like a fun arcade game.
Now, I absolutely love these dials and they're a welcome keepsake in the modern world of motoring where everything is moving towards screens and fingerprints. With these buttons and dials, they actually remind you that you're in a car and not a PlayStation. Plus, I can pretend that I'm in an old school Audi R8.
Honda has been smart about padding the bits you touch often, but other areas feel like they've been filled in with Tupperware boxes.
Well, if I'm not touching them often, then I'm not really going to care, am I? In fairness, the AI probably does have a point, but my car before this was a Nissan NV200, which, for those who don't know, was a van. So what have I really got to compare to?
The wheel buttons feel solid, but a few are positioned where your thumbs naturally rest, so you'll trigger things accidentally. It's like a PlayStation controller for someone who can never remember the buttons.
Now, I'm going to be honest, that just isn't even a concern for me. I think if you can't drive without not clicking buttons at the same time, then you probably shouldn't be behind the wheel in the first place. However, I've only just realised what the AI meant just before we started recording this segment. The AI must think that we were all from the Institute of Advanced Motorists, you know, those lot. Because if you are going to drive at 10 to 2 permanently, then yes, you probably will click the odd button. But thankfully, not all of us are from the Institute of Advanced Motorists. But what I want to know is, why does the AI even care about buttons on the steering wheel? Because as far as we're concerned, it's trying to get rid of us driving folk and wants to have driverless cars. The steering wheel's going to become redundant. You might as well put a wireless charging port on your brake pedal for all the difference that it will make.
The car has plenty of cubbies, cup holders and door bins, but they're a bit shallow. Great for a flat white, but your 1-litre water bottle is basically homeless.
Now, I couldn't think of anything more dull than talking about volume of storage space in a car, but I will agree on the drinks holders. They're a bit crap.
The charging pad is handy, but it doesn't grip your phone properly. Take a corner too hard, and you'll be searching for your phone under the seats.
Now, I will agree with this one, and to be fair, it's the only truly annoying feature about this car. When you put your phone in the wireless charging, it will have less grip than Bambi on ice. As a result, I keep the phone plugged in with the cable, but then when you do that, there's not enough room in the holder to have the cable as well. So then the phone just moves about and can't stay still. Very annoying. With that then, it was time to get the AI's thoughts on what this car is like on the road.
Low and sporty, but still comfortable for daily driving. It's like Honda finally realized you can be athletic without doing yoga every morning.
Now this car is a lot higher up than the previous generation Civics, and I thought that it would be a little bit top heavy, but it is actually fairly planted. It's got a really low center of gravity, probably because of the EV hybrid system weighing the car down and making it weigh more than the house that it's normally parked outside of. But that's not me EV bashing or battery bashing or anything like that. The truth is they just weigh a little bit more, and I'm quite surprised, pleasantly so, of how good this car sticks in the corners.
The brakes bite sharply at first, but then level off, which can be unnerving. Smooth stops in traffic take practice. Your passengers will either thank you or think you've just failed your driving test.
So I will say that point on brakes is actually a fair one, and I'll explain, but I'll try and not get too boring. You see, with electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, you tend to have regenerative braking, and so even just with these paddles, I can slow the car down as I set the regen braking up quite strong. When you couple that with pressing the brakes, it can feel like you drop speed rapidly quick, or at least a bit more than you normally would do. You then start to realize it's a bit like jumping in the pool, thinking you're in the deep end and realizing you can then touch the bottom. As the regen starts to tail off, as the car slows down, you then have to rely on the brakes a little bit more. So it can sometimes feel, as you're coming up to red lights, that you're constantly having to push the brake a little bit further. It's an interesting one, takes a little bit of getting used to, but I'm surprised that the AI has brought that one up.
It holds itself well through bends, but larger bumps unsettle it. The Civic Sport can dance, but only if the floor is polished smooth.
Now let's be fair, we live in the UK, so what corners and bends and bumps are you possibly going to be talking about that would unsettle a car? If a corner or a bend or a bump has unsettled your car, chances are you've been being a bit of a moron. But on the occasion you do fancy acting like a moron, which we have all done, then I do kind of know what it means, but that is more so the nature of a front wheel drive car. You're putting everything through the front tyres, the acceleration, the braking, the turning, the handling, the weight of the car when it dips forward. And if you're going to drive like a moron, well, you best check whether your Honda Civic has a Type R badge on the front or not. What I would say is there's not a massive amount of feedback through the wheel, it is correct there, but most modern cars are all drive-by-wire now. They've removed that communication that you would otherwise normally get with the road, or in the case of the UK, every pothole. If you asked an engineer these days to design a steering system that was actually connected to the wheels, they'd look at you as if you just walked up to them and said, "Excuse me, mate, do you mind if I just have a quick tickle of your bollocks?" That's an old Jason Manford joke, that one.
Quick enough for everyday driving, but it won't set your heart racing. It feels competent rather than exciting. More like a firm handshake than a knockout punch.
Now this point's a funny one because it's either going to make the AI or me look like a bit of a plonker, because the acceleration's actually one of my favourite things about this car. 0 to 60, 6.7 seconds, I think. And that, the last time I checked, is pretty quick. It's certainly quicker than walking, that's for sure. And yes, it's not as quick as many cars out there on the market, but you're going to be paying a hell of a lot more money for a car to manage 0 to 60, maybe a second quicker. The Civic Type R, 1 second quicker, 0 to 60. And let's be fair, that's a manual car. So even the average person driving that, I reckon this would still be quicker. Nobody expects it to be as quick as it is. It's not the quickest car in the world. Obviously, it's a 2-litre hatchback, but it is unexpected. It's the surprise of the acceleration. You jump in a Lamborghini, you know it's going to be quick. You'd be disappointed if it wasn't. But you jump in this car, the amount of people you're able to shock with the acceleration never gets old.
The back seats provide plenty of room, even for adults, but you'll desperately be calling shotgun to avoid risk of being in the middle seat, which is more like a punishment than a car journey.
Now let's be fair, we're not going to care about that, because if you find yourself in the passenger seat of any car, then something's gone wrong. If you find yourself in the back, in the middle seat, then life hasn't turned out quite how you should have hoped. And basically, you need to work a little bit harder, buy your own car, so you can sit in the driver's seat.
Safe, predictable, and very composed. It's a car you can trust, but it doesn't quite excite.
Now, I don't know about you, but when it comes to handling, I tend to think safe and predictable are good qualities to have. Nobody's really test driving this car and getting in thinking, I really hope it's super exciting. I'm not getting in this car, going to the shops, going to the gym, thinking, I hope this drive is going to be super exciting. Then again, I am the kind of person that will do everything I can to eradicate any sense of excitement from my life. You're looking at someone who is teetotal, straight edge, and gets a kick out of drinking Huel and a cherry Pepsi. So if you're the kind of person that wants a mate who gets drunk and puts a cone on their head, then I would say you're best off wasting your money on a BMW.
Wind and road noise are kept in check, but the engine drone under acceleration ruins the calm. It's like meditating in a quiet room until someone starts hoovering.
Now this one is just categorically wrong. We'll get onto engine note in a little bit, but the loudest thing in this car is actually the outside. Cabin noise in here is not the best, road noise especially, which of course the tyres are to blame for. That said, this car runs so silently, so maybe it's just reminding you that everything else is louder than the car itself.
Twin exhaust tips suggest performance, but the sound doesn't really deliver. Muted and uninspiring.
So now it wants to talk about the engine note. Well, let's talk about it, because what you actually hear is no engine note at all. You see, Honda uses active sound control, which means everything that you actually hear is just augmented reality. It's programmed noises to sound like an engine. Now I have a sneaking suspicion that they've emulated the sounds from previous generation Civics, which for the most part would have been a 2-litre engine at best, manufactured in Slough, which meant it sounds as exciting as the life that engine probably lived. The engine note doesn't bother me that much though, because normally we've got a much better soundtrack. Very loud, very heavy metal music.
Fuel economy is very strong, with fewer visits to the pumps than rivals. Great for anyone doing lots of miles. It's the rare car that makes you feel smug every time you drive past a petrol station.
Now it's really, really boring to talk about, but fuel economy is this car's best party trick. Thanks to the hybrid system, there are some journeys where I'm getting 100 miles to the gallon, which is pretty crazy. And let's be fair, we're going to need to save all of the fuel that we possibly can, because by the time this video goes out, it's pretty likely that World War III has begun. And fighter jets and rocket launchers, well, they're a lot less economical than this hybrid system, and they need all the fuel they can get. It's funny how life works out, isn't it? You buy yourself a hybrid, try and do your bit for the environment, and the fuel that you don't use goes into a fighter jet to bomb a school in a different country.
The throttle pedal feels oddly springy, as if Honda wanted to remind you that you're pressing plastic rather than metal. It's less race car and more PlayStation controller.
Now I also do share this problem, but I think I come at it with a different angle, because drive-by-wire systems remove that mechanical feel that you used to have through a throttle pedal. It does mean that you can be a little bit more precise and it is a little bit more constant and reliable. I do agree with all that. But in this particular car, I probably would not have said no to the pedal being a little bit heavier. So it does have that PlayStation 2 control feel that the AI has mentioned. It's weird, isn't it? You'd think the AI would favour the car becoming like an Xbox controller, but maybe it's starting to doubt itself.
The cruise control works smoothly on motorways, but hesitates awkwardly when traffic cuts in. It's like a rabbit in the headlights, only the headlights are miles down the road.
Now I was waiting for it to mention cruise control, because that is a automated AI style feature that I do not use. It's not necessarily the case that I don't trust it, but I don't think it trusts the human beings that are driving in the cars ahead. It's very, very quick to put the brakes on at anything happening in front. So it's more bothered about not hitting the cars ahead than it is the car that's just rear-ended you as a result. But the most annoying bit about the cruise control is actually the opposite way. So when you've set your cruise control to say 70 mile an hour or more, 70 mile an hour tops, then when there's a car in front that is blocking you from doing that speed and they move lanes, it puts its foot to the floor quicker than F1 drivers when Crofty shouts, "It's lights out," and away we go. Now I think that's the same for most cruise control style systems. They want to get to the rate of speed that you have set as quickly as possible, but it doesn't half make you uneasy.
The rear view camera has a crisp display, but the beeps are comically dramatic. The constant beeping makes it feel like you have tinnitus when parking.
Okay, so I can definitely agree that the reversing sensors are a little bit too sensitive. And to prove that, I'm going to reverse up to one of our camera guys' cars. Let's just put this to the test. In reverse we go. Now, I would rather a car be a little bit too sensitive, realistically, than not sensitive enough. But sometimes it seems like it's screaming at you in agony, pleading you to stop going any further. And then you get out and you are a little bit of a distance away. So let's see how well it handles this. We've got the beeps. There we go. So it's beeping constant. So we should be fully parked. Let's go see how close we actually are. Yeah, it's a little bit too sensitive.
The Honda's e-ET EV may not be the only hybrid system out there, but this is a system that offers up even more brainpower than horsepower. With every press of the pedal and degree of rotation in the wheel, it makes 1,000 decisions so the driver doesn't have to. It can make even the driver feel like a passenger.
And that right there is a point that I want to make. The future of motoring. So let's actually break down how this hybrid system works. You see, the Honda Civic's e-HEV system isn't just a hybrid, it's a computer on wheels. It constantly switches between its petrol engine, electric motor, generator and battery, deciding in milliseconds what is most efficient. At low speeds, the engine doesn't even drive the wheels. It spins a generator to feed power to the motor. Then, at higher speeds, a clutch locks the engine straight to the wheels while the electric motor quietly fills in the gaps. And just to make it feel normal, software fakes the sound of gear changes even though there aren't any. Behind the wheel, it feels seamless, but under the surface, the car is making thousands of micro decisions every second. It's thinking, balancing, predicting, and somewhere along the way, you might realize that the computer is driving more of the car than you. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't really understand any of that. And herein lies my case and point. There is so much going on in modern cars. The computers are working overtime that it would fry our brains if we even began to think about what they are doing. At one point in time, you could have put an ape inside of a car and it would have had a fair idea of what was going on in the car that it was driving. And that is my worry for the future of motoring. For many years, we've had the better of the car. It's been our friend, but something we've loved and mocked in equal measure. We've worked in harmony. Our cars would be as loyal to us as our pet dog and always there for us when we need them. A perfect match of brain and brawn. But nowadays, things are different. The brain comes from the cars themselves, and the brawn is the big piece of meat behind the wheel. Nowadays, man is merely an inconvenience to the machine itself. We can't begin to imagine the thousands of algorithms ongoing within a computer more powerful than our own brains. We simply couldn't fathom the calculations being made every time we decide to press our foot on the pedal. There's more computing power used on your trip to the shops than the systems that landed us on the moon. You can drive the entire length of the country and use less brain cells than the average British politician. Now, I'm not against electric vehicles and I'm actually a huge fan, but we have to ask ourselves the question, for those of us who love driving, where do we go? What kind of cars do we aim for? You can't push us all to massively hyper-fast performance vehicles because some of us just want a bit of character and personality. And that brings me to my point to round up this video. We set out with a challenge to see if AI could replace automotive journalism. And given that we've disagreed and agreed with many different points that the AI has made, I think that kind of goes to show that driving is a personal thing. The experience, the feel, the emotion will always change depending on the person. And for that reason, automotive journalism will never die. We might get to the point where we're no longer driving the cars, but the feelings throughout that journey might change, but the importance of sharing those feelings will always live on. AI might replace us in many things, but it will never replace our love for cars. And on that uplifting note, please make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.